Welcome to a live episode of Pound for Pound Box Report, episode 460. Joining me this week, um, Daniel from Four Boxing News and the Inscriber. What's going on, Daniel?
Going on, ladies and gentlemen.
Unfortunately, Gail will not be with us this evening, and Gail's a busy woman. She has other obligations, so she's not going to be with us for the next few weeks. So do want to give a shout out to Gail, and for those Gail from nyfights.com. If you want to follow Gail or talk all things boxing with Gail, you can do so on Twitter because I refuse to call it X at PR Pro San Diego. Let me repeat that again: PR Pro San Diego. For those who are new to Pound for Pound Box Report, Pound for Pound Box Report, live YouTube show, podcast, and blog discussing all things boxing. The motto is when boxing is good, we'll talk about it. When it's bad, we'll talk about it. Bottom line is, if it concerns the sweet science, it will get discussed. If you want to find out any and all information, background information, when it comes to Pound for Pound Boxing Report, you can check out the site p4pboxingreport.com. If you wish to email us, you can do so p4pboxing at p4pboxingreport.com. On the site, you'll find links to where to catch Pound for Pound Boxing Report all over social media, links to the YouTube channel, um, Facebook, Twitter, IG page. Also, links to where to catch us all over the podcast. Remember, wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, you should be able to find Pound for Pound Boxing Report. If you wish to donate, you can. We got Cash Me and PayPal donation link. I suggest right now because Cash Me is having some changes, which I personally don't like, in terms of how much you can donate and per day, per week, per month, etc., etc. So if you wish to donate, I suggest that you do so via PayPal. If you want to do so with Cash Me, that's all fine and dandy. Wouldn't matter if it's $1, $2, $5, whatever you wish to contribute. We would be grateful to help out the overall production behind the scenes. Last but certainly not least, with how Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas coming up, and our tendency to overconsume when it comes to food, if you're looking for a program that will keep you slim and trim during the upcoming holiday season, please check out the link to Body, BODI, formerly known as Beachbody On Demand. Whatever suitable fitness goals and interests, Body will have it. If you're looking for a boxing specific program, please check out 10 rounds, and that is 10 rounds is a 6-week program. 3 days a week are devoted to boxing based cardio, 2 days a week are devoted to weightlifting. I've been through it. Weightlifting resistant work, excuse me. I've been through it a few times. Very, very good program. If you're looking to get yourself into some reasonable shape, let's get things going, Daniel. And because there were so many world title fights this past weekend, and even extended into today, if you kept up to date on the happenings in Japan, we will talk about Junto Nakatani, who won earlier this morning, as well as a big, sizable upset for us, I'm concerned, in the smaller weight division, which also took place on that card. So I want to focus first on Beterbiev and Bivol. We could have our commentary on that. And then, because of the numerous fights, want to go back and forth. I get one fight, you get one fight, etc., etc., etc. But the main fight, of course, was Beterbiev and Bivol for undisputed honors at 175 pounds. Took place in Saudi Arabia. For me, very entertaining. Was it the outright brawl, war that a lot of folks wanted? No. But it was high impact chess. Uh, Bivol got off to an excellent start. And then in the middle rounds, you can see Beterbiev working his way back into the fight. To me, first half, second half, Daniel. Bivol got the better of it in the first half. Beterbiev got the better of it in the second half. The fight went the distance. Beterbiev ended up winning by split decision. I think it could have went either way, 15-13 either way. The only discrepancy, the only issue I have is with the 16-12 card in favor of Beterbiev. No way he won the fight by that much, but ultimately, I wasn't mad that he got the decision. Will they do it again? I hope so. Your thoughts on what transpired this past weekend in Saudi Arabia?
It was a fight that I'm a bit surprised myself that most people thought it was going to be rock and sock and robots because we got to remember both Bivol and Beterbiev have come up through the Russian late Soviet style amateur system. And that system is very, very strict when it comes to fundamentals. It's very rare where you're going to see all out brawls from fighters that go into that system. So this was more or less the fight that I was expecting. And you saw it from the first 3 or 4 rounds. You saw Beterbiev trying to pick it up a little bit faster than he was normally doing. But Bivol was finding his range to land the combinations that he could at the time because he was also being very cautious about Beterbiev's punching power, which he said in comparison, in the post-fight comparison to Canelo hits harder in single punches, but Beterbiev hit harder in combinations. So I thought that was interesting. The main flaw, unfortunately, that I saw, and you could see it throughout the fight from Bivol, unfortunately, is it's the same, unfortunately, complaint that people will have when it comes to Bivol. It's that tendency that if he feels he can't take you out completely within the first 3 or 4 rounds, he tends to try to just outbox his way to get to the decision victory. And unfortunately, that also causes him to not take advantage of certain situations. I believe it was in the 6th or 7th round where Bivol hurt Beterbiev. And you could tell Beterbiev was hurt. While Bivol tried to land more combinations, it wasn't as aggressive as you want to see somebody that, if you have somebody hurt in front of you, and there's a person that rarely gets hurt in Beterbiev. That is unfortunately the factor that cost him the fight, because as the fight went on and you went to later rounds, Beterbiev got into his rhythm, and he hurt a little bit late. The fight was a pretty even fight though, up to the championship rounds. And Beterbiev just knew that little bit extra gear, at least as far as activity, to really push it in and to really make the point home that I should be the one winning this fight. Now, as far as the scorecards, I'm fine with the draw and I'm fine with the 115, 113. I agree with you that 116, 112, that didn't happen.
Yeah. Excuse me for interrupting. I said split decision. It was in fact the majority decision. My bad. Go on.
Yeah, no problem. But Bivol's team agrees, and they're actually putting in a protest. They want that judge to explain himself in that matter. What's probably hurting people, and this is unfortunately something that I have seen in social media a little bit, is they saw a little bit of favoritism from the people in attendance towards Beterbiev, mainly based on religion. Beterbiev is a devout Muslim. This was in Saudi Arabia. And there were plenty of shots of the blood money mark cheering his ass off whenever Beterbiev got a good offense. Now, I can see the argument that people may have that can say that Bivol should have won this fight. But this is also one of the tenets in fighting. One tenets that can win out is activity. If I'm correct, Mike, Beterbiev almost threw or did throw 200 more punches than Bivol, from my understanding, even though Bivol landed a higher percentage. A lot of times, particularly in the higher weight divisions, that will get you favor with the judges. Like I said, I'm fine with the outcome. Will we see it again? That's going to be the question, because both of these guys are probably lined up in 2025 for the Canelo sweepstakes.
If they were to run it back, what changes could you see happening from both men? Um, reading my timeline, because I wasn't able to watch the fight live. I caught it later. A lot of people felt that Bivol, uh, left some food on the plate, particularly in the late rounds. And while Beterbiev came on strong, he wasn't on his A game, and Bivol didn't do enough to take advantage or and close the show late, or he either that or he didn't do enough to build an early lead. Rematch, if it were to occur, do you see anything different? Do you see Beterbiev turning it on, or can he turn it on and raise his level at this age? Your thoughts?
If there's a rematch, I could definitely see Bivol's team try to really emphasize starting earlier, and like I mentioned, recognize when Beterbiev is hurt and actually take advantage of it. Because at the end of the day, you started to also see signs where Beterbiev didn't become an old man overnight, but you saw the process is starting to begin. You could tell even like what I mentioned, that he threw more punches than Bivol. You can tell a lot of it wasn't as crisp as you would have seen him 2 or 3 years ago. So that process is already starting to happen. That's what Bivol needs to take advantage of, because up to that point, it was a pretty even fight, but there were instances where he could have stamped it a little bit better. And those are the moments he has to take advantage.
I tend to agree. On the undercard here, Jai Opetaia, IBF champion at cruiserweight, fought another I believe another Brit, Jack Massey. Uh, how can I put this? I don't want to be disrespectful, but um, when they had that weigh in, and people were commenting that maybe Massey had got the best of Opetaia at the stare down. Um, my head, I was thinking, okay, that's one thing. He's selling wolf tickets. It's going to be a whole different matter in the ring, and it was that. This was easy work for Opetaia, and unless Zerto or Chris Billum Smith prove otherwise and actually get in the ring with him, um, the Aussie is clearly the best at cruiserweight, and he showed it once again in this fight.
Yeah, this showed that Jai Opetaia is, as of right now, the class of the cruiserweight division. And you mentioned the only two names right now that you can actually say can pose a challenge: Chris Billiam Smith and Zerto. Those are the only two names. And those two are circling each other right now. So I guess once that's settled down between those two, the only logical fight to make after that is Opetaia.
Bellum Smith and Zerto fighting each other in a unification bout, right? My question is, um, the winner, particularly if it's Bellum Smith, or even if Bellum Smith or Zerto, will we ever see one of those two other champions fight this dude?
If it's Billiam Smith, if he wins out, I don't think so. They'll be more careful with him. Zerto has that bit of a cavalier streak where he's willing to challenge himself. Like we've seen it even when he's getting thoroughly outclassed, like in that Bivol fight, he's still willing to put it out there. So if it's to get to fight Opetaia, if you want to see it, is probably Zerto's probably going to be the one that would be able to do it.
Let's excuse me. Let's move on to the country of Japan specifically because Saturday, Sunday, Monday, they just basically had a 3-day bonanza of world title fights. What we usually see at the on New Year's Eve, right? We saw this past weekend. I believe it was a special holiday. It was a particular holiday over in Japan, and they just focused a whole bunch of cards centered around that. Um, I want to run this down. I'm going to split this up because all combined over 10 world title fights. I believe uh, 4 today, or 3 today, 4 Saturday, and some 4 Sunday, excuse me. I think 4 today, and then you had some more on Saturday, right? Let's start with junior flyweight division and followers of the lower weight division. Remember Masamichi Yabuki, right? For scoring one of the upsets of the year, I believe back in 2022. It was 2021. It was when he beat Kenshiro, stopped him. Now Kenshiro turned around, stopped Yabuki in a rematch. Well, Yabuki has worked. He worked his way back up to world title contention. Fought IBF champion Sivenathi Nontshinga Daniel, and I'm watching this fight because I'll get this one. I'll let you cover recap some other ones. Boxing basics. The most important punch is the jab, and that's what he used Yabuki to control, to tame, and ultimately led to stopping Nontshinga in 9 to win the IBF crown at 108 pounds. Yabuki has what I call an educated left hand, Daniel. Um, he can throw single hard jabs. He can throw double and triple jab. He can use the jab to attack, and he can use the jab to counter. Shinga had nothing, no answers for that punch. He tried to move around. He tried to be more aggressive, but Yabuki would just stay disciplined, stayed in his technique. And whenever he created the line from Nontshinga to cross, whenever Nontshinga would try to cross that line, boom, right hand, boom, left hook. Yabuki didn't even have to use his a real body attack, which is one of his strengths, to get the advantage. He just KISS kept it simple, stupid, basic boxing fundamentals. And then he followed up with power. By the middle rounds, he was in complete control. And once he found out that he could hurt Yabuki, round 7 and 8, it was a wrap. Dare I say, as impressive as Yabuki's win over Kenshiro, this performance was a bit cleaner. He didn't have to break much of a sweat. And Nontshinga, I have to say it, Daniel, he's a bit pyrite. Fool's gold. When he initially won the title, he looked like a fighter with real promise, but then we saw how he got stopped one hit a quarter style against Curiel. In the rematch, he didn't fight the smartest fight, even though he got the win. And against Yabuki, he was outclassed, severely outclassed. It wasn't even a no contest. I covered it live for Three Kings Boxing. Please check out Three Kings Boxing, your source for pure unadulterated boxing information. Shout out to the Three Kings Boxing crew. 2K, aka Prodigy of Boxing Talk, the man behind Three Kings, Bo, senior writer, head of media relations. You heard him on the show numerous times. Shout out to Bacardi, the senior writer. I'm a senior writer. Shout out to the contributors behind the scenes, be it Jay, be it Corey, be it Lord Zoe. Shout out to Red, who does a lot of work on the site. and is our editor. Um, thorough exhibition, just a clinic that Yabuki put on to get the stoppage win over Nontshinga. And if he keeps that form, I don't care if he is 32 years old. If he keeps that form, Daniel, he has a chance to do some real damage in this second run as world champion. That fight took place Saturday on the same day as Beterbiev Bivol, right? Let's move on to Sunday. Takuma Inoue, younger brother of Naoya Inoue, right? There had been talk that all roads were leading to a possible unification bout with Junto Nakatani. And we'll talk about Nakatani, who, unless you've been sleeping under a rock, won earlier today in Tokyo. Back to Inoue, fought a countryman by the name of Tsutsumi and one of a couple of upsets in the 3-day boxing world championship boxing weekend, if you will, extended weekend over in Japan. As I covered this fight as well, Daniel. Inoue played with his food early. Tsutsumi gained confidence, and once he gained confidence, he outworked Inoue. Simple and plain. Inoue could have been fought with more force, but once the fighter gets confident and gets the eye of the tiger, and Tsutsumi had the eye of the tiger from the moment you can see it from the ring walk, and Inoue had no answers. He let this dude get momentum, and it was a wrap. Close fight, but to me, from the midpoint on, Tsutsumi dominated, and I have no problem that he got the decision. Well deserved.
Yeah, this was a very, very fun fight to see. But as skilled as he is, and as much as he's willing to get inside the phone booth and exchange as he is, you can tell the areas where Takuma's still 1 or 2 steps behind his brother, obviously a pound for pound fighter in Nanu anyway. Because early on, he could have finished it off. But you mentioned he played with his food and allowed Tsutsumi to make it a close phone booth fight. You don't ever want to give your opponent that type of opportunity. If you've been trained to be a better of an outside fighter. And especially when you're not as skilled as your older brother.
Nor have the power.
That's the ultimate thing. He's not quite as skilled as Nano Inoue, and he's nowhere near strong as Nano Inoue is. And then once Tsutsumi got over that, he was able to take control from the inside and essentially shift the momentum and wins the title as a result. I'm perfectly fine with the result. Hopefully this would be one of the fights that we want to see again, because I want to see if Takuma can pick up the areas early on where he probably would have been able to finish off Tsutsumi, and maybe I said pick the brain of your older brother a little bit, Takuma. Let him tell you, like, this is what I see where you would have missed, and maybe you'll get him better next time on it, because Takuma anyway has talent. It's not like a nepotism type of deal where you just hyping him up because he's not Inoue's brother. He has his own talent. But you can tell right now at this stage, it's not there yet compared to his brother.
Indeed, and I don't think it ever was. And even if he was to win this fight, if he would have went on to fight Junto Nakatani, who's WBC champion, I strongly feel that Inoue Takuma Inoue would have lost. On the undercard here, this particular card took place in Tokyo. Actually, all of these fights that I'm going to mention took place in Tokyo at the Ariake Coliseum. Um, Kenshiro Teraji, highly successful reign at 108 pounds, unified champion, made the official move up to 112 after one failure to get a unification bout with Jonathan Gonzalez. Two, having issues making 108 pounds, moved up to 112. Fought Cristofer Rosales, who we all remember a few years back for his surprising win over Daigo Higo, and more recently, his inability to land a fight with El Rey Martinez because El Rey was dealing with weight issues, injuries, illness, whatever. Numerous attempts to make that fight um, couldn't happen. Anyway, these two fought for the vacant WBC belt at 112, with Bam Rodriguez moving back up to 115 pounds. And minus a brief scare in round four where Teraji got clocked with a shot. Daniel, this was all Kenshiro. Um, Speed, his ability to give angles and dart in and out, even though Rosales was the significantly bigger. Rosales was the full weight class bigger than Kenshiro from a technical standpoint, from a skill standpoint, from a speed and athletics standpoint. Teraji showed why he's an elite fighter, having his way before stopping him. And based on what I saw here, he's going to have just as good of a run at 112 pounds. Kenshiro Teraji, one of the best fighters in the lower weight division, and he showed it with an emphatic, dominant performance against Rosales. Move on. Let's move on from those two bouts. Now I understand there were more world title bouts here on this particular card, two other world title bouts here, but if I took the time to talk about all of those title fights, unfortunately, this show will last 2+ hours, and I don't want to do that. So let's move from that card on Saturday to what took place. Sorry, I'm dealing with some technical issues. My apologies, everyone. Let's move on to where do I want to go? I'm trying to decide here. My apologies, y'all. Let's move on to. I'm sorry. I'm having some technical issues on my end. Um, let's move on to what transpired earlier today, right?
Mhm.
Nakatani was the main event here, but on the undercard, we had another upset as Kosei Tanaka, Daniel, 4 division champion, right?
Yep.
Was the decided favorite against the guy that no one heard of by the name of Cafu, South African. Uh, but Cafu scored one of the biggest upsets of the year, beating Tanaka by a split decision to become WBO champion at 115 pounds. I watched this, and if you like high class boxing, that's what you saw in this fight. The one thing I discovered here in terms of Phumelele Cafu, no one had really seen him. He basically came into this fight off of what was amount to a year layoff. He only fought one round in the previous 12 months, but this dude could box. I mean, really box. Kosei Tanaka is no slouch when it comes to the skills department, but this South African, he stood right there with him, calm. He showed power. He had patience. The only advantage that Tanaka had was when he was able to get to the body. But when this fight was just in the center of the ring from the outside, Cafu was right there. It was basically 1-2 points on all three judges' scorecard. I have no problem that Cafu got the decision. The knockdown show was ultimately the difference. Um, no one knew him coming in, but I thoroughly enjoyed his performance, and I thoroughly enjoyed this fight. Um, this was very, very entertaining. I loved it. Skill at its finest.
Oh, this was fun. This was fun to see. And quick fact, Cafu is actually from the same camp, same gym as Nonshinga. Same trainer too.
Yes, yeah. They spar. They were training. They were sparring mates. Worked in the same camp.
Yep.
With Cafu getting ready for Tanaka and Nontshinga getting ready for Yabuki.
Yep. And you can tell that gym was as sad as they were in the beginning of the weekend, they were more than happy at the end of the weekend because this was great fighting throughout. And the difference in that fight was I forgot what round it was. I think it was in the seventh. Cafu landed a beautiful right hook right as Tanaka was trying to throw an uppercut
Right.
and clocked them clean. You looked at Tanaka was able to get up, make the count.
And he
Eventually,
rallied Tanaka in the next, I think it was either the eighth or ninth round.
yeah,
Cafu seems to slow down because of Tanaka with the body, but Cafu showing heart and showing resolve. He rebounded, and even though Tanaka, I felt finished stronger. Cafu he continued to fight back hard to the final bell.
exactly. And if that fight would have lasted probably 5 to 10 seconds more, Tanaka might have scored a knockdown.
Yeah.
That's how close this fight was, and that was mainly because from the ninth round on, Tanaka decided just to launch flurry of activity. The punches didn't have to hurt, but it was just something where you had to show that your activity was going to make up for the fact that you may not have fully recovered from your own knockdown. So that's what we saw happening throughout the ninth and 10th round. More activity from Tanaka, Cafu rallying, getting his defense back, and getting back some shots, particularly to the body. But this was a fight that it only takes one thing to make a difference. Because outside of that knockdown, you could make an honest case Tanaka wins the fight based on the fact of the late round activity. But it always takes that one act that gets you to make an upset. And this was a beautiful upset. Almost all of the fights that we've covered so far, folks, especially the ones from Japan, almost all of them you want to see it again. The only one is the Kenshiro fight is probably the only one you don't want to see again. And that's mainly because of how dominant Kenshiro was.
I don't want to see that Yabuki rematch either. I don't care unless Yabuki gets old. I just don't think Nontshinga has it. Again, I think he's pyrite. I think he's fool's gold. He's too inconsistent. 1 minute he fights well, and the other minute, one fight he fights really well. The other next time he's in the ring, you just wonder what's going on with his brain. He's just not thinking, not fighting to his ability. I just don't get it. I just don't get it with him at this point. Proceed, Daniel.
No, it's as mainly that. It's how that activity does well. And it shows again that it's not only Southeast Asia and a little bit of Latin America that's starting to get into the range of lower fighters. Southern Africa is starting to become a hotbed for lower weight classes when it comes to fighters. You have to remember, this is the land of Hickey Butler. So that dude may have set up a template for other fighters to follow now. So you may start not to see South Africa become a lower weight division hotbed, not to the scale of Japan. Let's say, look, is Japan right now almost has a monopoly on that.
Well, what I would say is, I would say that the country of South Africa could reemerge as a force in boxing's lower weight divisions because in the 1990s, with fighters like Welcome Nita, who was champion at 122, um, um, Vuyani Bungu, who scored the upset of the year in 1994, his win over Kennedy McKinney. He was a long reigning champion at 122. Bulele Botile, solid champion at 118 and 126. Lelo Ledwaba, um, 120 champion at 122 in the early 2000s. If you studied the career of Manny Pacquiao, after he lost for many people, he burst on the scene with his stoppage win over Ledwaba back in 2001. I want to say. So in the 90s, South Africa was a hotbed, and of course, uh, I cannot omit Brian Mitchell, who was long reigning champion at 130 pounds in the mid 80s, from 86 to 91. Um, it'll take too long to go into his backstory, but because of he was a white fighter fighting in apartheid South Africa. All of his world title defenses had to be on the road because there was understandably a ban on world title. There was a ban on world title fights in South Africa during his time as champion. But yeah, uh, what was a really uh, what we saw from the country of South Africa in the 80s, I'd say mid late 80s up into the early aughts, we could see a reemergence of that now. And the leader of the pack could be Cafu, especially given his performance against Kosei Tanaka early this morning. While you mentioned you want to see a rematch, possible rematch in most of the fights we saw over the past 3 days or 2 days, one rematch I do not want to see, Daniel, is Junto Nakatani fighting the Thai fighter Salapat. Um, Nakatani played with this dude. Fight took place earlier this morning, again in Japan on ESPN Plus. And Nakatani, he's a force. He's a force. He's pound for pound. Um, I believe he's clear best bantamweight in the world. One of the top 10 fighters, regardless of weight class. And I know Tyler Pot came with this gaudy 76-1 record with 53 knockouts, but context is critical here. You look at the challenges record, he had fought no one of note, and you knew it coming in. And Nakatani did whatever he wanted just until he decided, it's time to end matters, and he did just that. Round six, turned up the heat, turned on the power, and it was a wrap.
Yeah, we don't need to see a rematch of this. Nakatani's right now is fighting in many ways, not so much ghosts, but he's fighting the reputation anyway. In the fact that he has the skills and he has the power and he has the mean streak to make the case that he should be the number one guy in Japan instead of Inoue. He has that chip on his shoulder that Inoue had when Kazuto Ayoka was on top. And you saw that Inoue pushed that pass to the point where he overtook Kazuto. Nakatani has the same chip. Whether he actually overcomes Inoue, that's going to be something interesting to see in the next 2 or 3 years.
And I think we'll get that chance, Daniel, because as I talked about with Takuma in a way, it seemed like the plan was for Nakatani to fight Takuma in a bantamweight unification bout. But with Takuma losing um, this past Saturday, that plan is going to be scratched off. And the question is, how long will Nakatani stay at 118 pounds before eventually moving up to 122? Um, word in these boxing streets that Nakatani and Inoue could fight on the same card uh, in April 2025 in the United States. And all roads are leading to these two fighting. Um, I watched the replay of this. Shout out to Bo for Three Kings Boxing. He had a prior appointment, so he covered this card for me early this morning. When I watched the replay on ESPN Plus, um, they made sure during the pre-fight video to note to feature in a way when they was talking about Nakatani, and you don't have to understand Japanese that much to know that Nakatani. They asked Nakatani about in a way doing that little uh video preview, right? So if they're going to do that, that lets you know that uh these two, the plan is for these two to fight at some point in 2025. The only question is, how long will Nakatani stay at 18? Will he try to go for unification bout, or will he just say F it? With Takuma losing, let's make the decision at the end of this year, early 2025, to say, Monster Inoue, you are our target, and we coming for you next year.
First, we have to see if Takuma gets the rematch, because I got a feeling then probably is going to be a rematch, because that's probably going to be a good barometer to show what he can do. Because you mentioned it, we don't know how long Nakatani is going to stay at 118, and we don't know how long Inoue can actually stay at 122, because he's still young.
Now, 31, 30, 31. I think in my humble opinion, I think he's filled out at 122. That's his optimum weight. I know they're talking about him at 126, but I think if he does move up, it's just to win another title. He has said in interviews that 22 is his prime weight right now.
Yeah, I'm one of the people that can see him do 126. Probably like in about 2 years, start to see 126, which does give that window for Nakatani to move up to 122. But just to go the bear, I would say, like, to poke the bear a bit, I would try to get the match with Takuma first, just to poke the bear. Because if you want the best version of Inoue, it's an Inoue that has something to be pissed off at you about. And all big brothers know, one easy way for you to get mad at somebody is to beat up little brother.
Sorry, I was on mute. I just don't think it'll matter with Takuma whether he gets the rematch, and even if he wins it, there's a clear disparity in skill and in just overall natural talent between the two. I think um, Nakatani knocks Takuma out with ease. He could wait for that, but that's just delaying the inevitable. Um, whether you are a fan of the lower weight division, or just if you're just a serious fan in general, Nakatani is clear the biggest threat to Inoue from 18 to 26. It's the fight that everybody wants to see. Um, Fill out that 50, fill out the Tokyo Dome, that 50,000 seat arena. It will be arguably the biggest fight in Japanese boxing history. Um, this is destined. It's destined to happen. And when you get situations like that, you can play around if you want to by waiting on Takuma or whatever. You don't stop what seems inevitable. And again, um, Naoya in a way, Junto Nakatani. Clearly, that is the fight that fans of the lower weight division want to see. The fight that serious boxing enthusiasts wants to see. Shouldn't delay it. Let's make it happen ASAP. Let's move on to some news here. I didn't put this in the docket, but during our time off, um, two fighters that I felt that Canelo Alvarez has been avoiding, David Benavidez and David Morrell Daniel. It looks like negotiations are close to being finalized for these two cats to fight at um, some point in the first quarter of 2025. Details, inside knowledge on this, Daniel.
From my understanding, their target is going to be for January 2025. I think the part of the main hang up now is whether this would be a pay-per-view or not. Because obviously David Benavidez, he's been on that stage. He's the name that everybody mentions when you talk with Canelo. He's the name that's always gonna pop off. But Morrell, despite his skill, is still unfortunately a bit of an unknown commodity. And that's the main thing that's hurting him at the moment. It's mainly that for making this a pay-per-view fight. But for both men, this is the best fight you can make outside of getting Canelo. And the only other hang up I don't think I've seen is whether this is going to be 168 or 175. Because David seems a little bit serious when he says, I'm not going back down unless it's Canelo. Maybe some extra cash is going to get thrown in his way in order to make this with Morrell. Sorry. But it's the best fight either guy can make, because with Benavidez, you're going to have somebody that has a bit of a knockout streak like you and does have a really good skill set for his age in Morrell. But from Morrell's side, this is the big test, because with all young guys, when they get into that knockout power streak, it doesn't matter what division. Sometimes promoters want to be guarded. They want to.
And everything's been easy for him. He hadn't really been tested.
Exactly. That's the main point. And the best example we can see when you overdo it too much and it may wind up being regressing is the man that Canelo fought last in Edgar Berlanga. Top rank held it a little bit. They were a little bit too careful, and they wound up having Berlanga regress under their watch. You don't want to do that with someone like Morrell, who has built up a pretty decent and loyal fan base for a Cuban fighter in most interesting places. Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Right.
Yeah, he has a very dedicated and a very loyal fan base in Minnesota, and I think parts of Wisconsin too now. So he brings an audience with him. Like I said, an audience that you wouldn't think a Cuban fighter would have outside of Miami. So that's what's going to bring into it. This is going to be an excellent fight. Once everything is decided, once we know where it's going to go, because depending on what Canelo decides for May, they may have they may be in the sweepstakes.
And we'll keep you abreast on the negotiations. It all seems that these two fighters will have a virtual agreement in place. On paper, it makes for a very good fight. Two of the very best at 168 pounds, moving up to 175 to fight each other. And I agree with you, Daniel. It's the best fight for both men. I don't know if it will be a pay per view. Right now, I say it should not. Well, let me take that back. Benavidez is a popular figure, so I can see because he's a popular guy now. He's been in some high profile fights, particularly the one with Caleb Plant. Um, that people could say that those behind the scenes, the power that be is saying that yes, put him on pay per view, right? And plus, people uh know him because of his failed attempts to fight Canelo. That made just as much buzz as any fight from Benavidez, right? So I can understand the rationale behind that. The bottom line is these two, it looks like they're fighting, and should it happen, it should be a really, really good one. Speaking of fights that's being discussed, being negotiated, Stephen Fulton and Brandon Figueroa a few years back um, fought an outstanding contest in what was a unification bout at 122 pounds. Fulton ended up getting the decision. Um, Strangely enough, Daniel Figueroa had the opportunity to rematch him at 122 pounds, but Figueroa said no. He didn't want it at 122. He'd rather have it at 126. Moved up. Fulton, of course, went on to lose, get embarrassed, and beat down by an Inoue July, last year um, over in Japan. He's fought once since that defeat. I didn't think he looked great. Got knocked down in the process. Where Fulton is now, and from not just physical but mental standpoint, post that dismantling that he suffered from Inoue, how do you think that he would fare against a Figueroa who's probably more of a featherweight at this point, naturally bigger guy than Cool Boy Steph?
This is actually a good contrast to the main fight that we talked about, Beterbiev Bivol, where you saw a guy that was a little bit more active get the victory. If I'm correct, that was the same case with Brandon. Brandon was a bit active, and I knew that he focused a lot in the body when he fought Fulton.
Yeah.
And that was another close fight that I remember. I thought Brandon won. But you could also tell at that point that he was not going to do 122 anymore. He wasn't going to be able to. It was going to get close to, if in order for him to make it, he would have to become Skeletor Brandon Rios at the weigh-ins. This is an interesting crossroads for it to come into, because when Brandon now, like I said, he's more filled out as a featherweight. So, and you can tell that he's more comfortable. And with Fulton, you have a guy that has the skill set. He had the skill set to at least get to the fight with Inoue. He just unfortunately met somebody that was a better fighter overall. How much of that is going to play into the mind when you're facing a guy again in Brandon who a good amount of people believe you lost to? That to me is going to see how the chess game is going to go, because this could be the fight that pushes either guy into the next sphere. If Fulton is able to take it in, he recovers from the Inoue loss. He's back, at least in the conversation, probably for best American fighters at that point. And we can see how he can rebuild from there. He has the opportunity to do what Daniel Dubois has done to his career. People don't remember Daniel Dubois got beat the fuck up by Joe Joyce with an orbital bone. On top of that, lost at heavyweight. Most people thought he was washed at that point, but he rebuilt himself back up. And look what you're seeing today. Having the biggest win of his career, effectively kicking Anthony Joshua out of any conversation with us for being a top contender for heavyweight. That's the trajectory that Stephen Fulton should focus on.
Indeed. Back to our earlier comments about Bivol Beterbiev. I appreciate you, Cosmic. Cosmic Cosmo, who's listening live, put his comment up for everybody to see. He says he felt that Bivol won. In truth, Cosmic, I had Bivol winning by a couple of points on my scorecard. Even though I said earlier it could have went either way on my personal scorecard, once I was able to witness the fight in full, I had Bivol winning by 2 points. I could make an argument um, um, 8-4 for Bivol because I thought had he was he did so well in the first half of the fight. I could make an argument for 8-4, but in watching it a couple of times, I settled for 7-5 for Bivol. But I agree with you. I had Bivol winning that fight. I appreciate you checking us out. If you've not done so, please make sure you hit that like button and you hit that subscribe button. If you've not done so, appreciate you for checking us out and appreciate your comments. Let's move on, Daniel, to um, some fights that's going to happen this weekend in Orlando. The return of Tim Tszyu. Last time we saw him, he was he suffered that nasty head gash in losing his title to Sebastian Fedora. He returns to the ring to fight IBF 154 champion Bakram Murtazaliev. And Styles makes fights right. The champion Murtazaliev, big guy in my opinion for 154. Not just height, but just overall size. Tszyu is no, he's taller than Tszyu, and I think when they get in the ring with each other, he will look significantly bigger than Tszyu. But he doesn't move. The champion, um, decent jab, decent speed, decent power. Um, I think that this has the potential to be a firefight for how long it lasts, but I think that Tszyu is the more explosive guy. I think he's more quick, fast twitch, right?
Mm-hmm.
If Tszyu's cut has fully healed, and that gash was so nasty, it could be a situation where it was never ever fully healed. He could just be tender in that area where he was cut on his head. Um, but on balance, I would make Tszyu the favorite here. But I think whoever wins, I think is going to be entertaining throughout.
Yeah, this is a very fun fight to see because Murtazaliev is not a tiny man. He's just not, and that is going to be an interesting case for Tszyu because he was in many ways probably not so much size wise, but height wise. He was the smaller man in the Fedora fight. So now you're presenting him with a similar situation and with a chip on his shoulder. And that's going to be interesting to see how you can measure Tim Tszyu because he's had adversity before. Remember, I forgot what fight he got knocked down in early. I think it was like in one of the last Showtime fights.
Was that Boucher?
I think so, yeah.
Where he got knocked down in the opening round?
Yeah, like a flash knockdown.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can show you can catch him. And sometimes cuts do play a factor of how you fight. And that gash, oh man, that from Tszyu, it's just in wrestling there's something called
Why
the
his
Buddha
corner
scale.
didn't just decide to say enough is enough and make it a no contest? It was just dumb
Yeah.
to have him fight for that long.
Yep. But I was about to say, like, in pro wrestling, there's something called the Muda scale. And that's just basically because there's a Japanese wrestler called the Great Muda who at one point bled so much in his face that they named when people bleed in his face compared to him because nobody bled like Muda at that time. Tszyu was in that scale, and that was insane. The only other person I remember seeing that scale recently was Badu Jack when he had that giant gash on his forehead. But he's going to come in wanting to reestablish himself in this division. Because we have to remember, for a long time, he wanted to get unification fights. He's particularly wanted Jermel Charlo. But obviously, with 154 being what it is now, his big shark is getting that rematch with Fundora. And it's a fight that I would love to see, and this is the first step to it. And I think he's going to be able to overcome the size of Mursaliev. He'll probably focus on the body because he does well in body shots. And I think he'll win it late, probably around 8th or 9th round.
And again, that fight is going to be held this coming Saturday in Orlando on PBC, right?
PBC, Amazon Prime. This is, I think, their first non-pay-per-view card.
Indeed, indeed. One more comment from Cosmo before we move on to the last fight. We begin to shut things down. You mentioned Dubois in your commentary about the rematch between the upcoming fight with Stephen Fulton. He says he thought Dubois was really done after almost getting knocked out by Kevin Lorena. A lot of people felt that, Cosmo. For those who don't know what he's referring to, Dubois, when he had an interim belt, WBA interim or regular, however you want to call it, fought Kevin Lorena on the undercard of rematch between Fury and Chisora. I want to say either October or December 2022. Let me look it up right quick. December 2022 it was. My apologies. And Lorena had Dubois in all kinds of problems. Dubois ended up stopping him in 3, but it was worrisome, his performance, after he got knocked down 3 times. Come to find out, he suffered a severe knee injury in that fight, torn ACL, and a lot of people thought that, this is not good for Dubois. Even though he won, a lot of people felt that he was shot worn and he was overrated. And a lot of people still had that memory of the loss to Joe Joyce in their heads, and coming off of that, he just felt that mentally, physically, Dubois didn't have it. But you want to talk about a personal turnaround. Look where he's gone from there. Yes, he got stopped by Usyk, but there was a questionable moment in that fight where he hit Usyk with a body shot. A lot of people felt it was a good body shot. Usyk was down, given time to recover. He ended up ultimately stopping Dubois, and from there, Dubois has been on a serious roll. And we saw what he did 2-1 Anthony Joshua a couple of weeks ago. Last fight we're going to preview here before we begin to shut things down. Appreciate your comments. Cosmo. Last fight we're going to talk about here is going to take place in Germany. Vacant IBF super middleweight title. William Skull fighting Vladimir Shishkin. And look, I know they're fighting. I know this is a world title fight. This is the belt that Canelo was stripped of. Give me a reason to be excited about this fight. I'm having a tough time summing up my level of enthusiasm for it. I'm pretty much like, meh.
Yeah, it's kind of tough considering the 2 fighters in question and the fact that it's a consequence of the IBF being the sanctioning body that, say what you want, they follow the rules. And it's tough. I can't really find a way to actually get excited about other than
these 2 guys are essentially boxers, particularly Skull. It's not they don't have the exciting style to get my interest perked up. I mean, I'm sorry. I know I'm supposed to have series here and have all this great insight or whatever about these upcoming fights, and I'm supposed to be on 10 for all of them. But there are levels to this, and quote unquote world title fight aside,
there's also the fact that unfortunately it's not so much that these guys they aren't punchers. It's not that. Trust me, it's not that. It's because one of the things that makes us exciting about sports, and one of the reasons why, as much as we gripe about them, it's a good thing to at least have 2 or 3 sanctioning bodies. Is you can have champion against champion. What one organization thinks is the top guy compared to with the other organizations they consider a top guy, and you can see those organizations get credibility. That's how the WBO in the 80s and 90s built up their reputation, because the guys that they picked to be champions did fairly well against people from WBC, WBA, and IBF. That's how they became one of the big four. Unfortunately, this is super middleweight. And the guy that's holding the 3 other belts is Canelo. Neither guy has a chance against Canelo, honestly.
Right.
So that's what kills a lot of the excitement of this fight. And I feel bad for it because the IBF is the ones getting caught in this situation. Probably the best comparison that I could probably give in the situation, because you felt like he was such an afterthought, even though he held the belt in the Glamour division. When Devin Alexander had the IBF title at welterweight, when both Floyd and Manny were still around, he was such an afterthought because it was Floyd and Manny. And undercard, you forget for a time that he had a title. And I'll always hold that against Floyd. He had a chance to fully unify fighting Devin Alexander. He never chose to. Same thing with Manny. I feel bad that the IBF got to put into this situation, but yeah, I can't really get excited. And European fights overall, not so much that I can't get excited, because we've all seen the bullshit around it, particularly Germany. We've seen the bullshit that happens a lot of times when it comes to fights held in Germany, when it comes to European fighters. You can ask Gennady Golovkin how he wasted 2 or 3 years of his prime trying to get a fight with Felix Stern that never came.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I think we're going to end things on that note. I want to once again thank Cosmic for his comments and his for his comments. Again, if you're checking us out on YouTube, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. To do so, you'll get notifications for any future episodes of the Pound for Pound Box Report, and it'll help in terms of overall algorithms. As I said earlier on in the show, Gail will not be with us this week. I don't think she'll be with us next week either, because she has a life outside of this podcast, and so she has other obligations that she must attend to. Again, Gail from nyfights.com. If you want to check out all her stuff boxing related, please go to nyfights.com. If you want to chop it up and talk boxing with her, you can do so on Twitter, because I refuse to call it X. You can do so on Twitter at PRPro San Diego. Let me repeat that again, at PRPro San Diego. And I go to you, Daniel, from 4Boxing News in the Inscriber. For those who want to check out all things boxing, check out all things pro wrestling, check out all things NBA, especially when it comes to your beloved Miami Heat. The NBA season starts soon, I believe later on this month. For those who want to talk boxing, wrestling, all things Miami Heat, let the folks know where they can hit you up.
Yes, folks. So you can catch me. You see him the hand on the screen, Raucus99, or AWKUZ99. That catch me on Twitter, Threads. So you do have Blue Sky, do have Mastodon. I'm not on Spill yet, but who knows with the way Elon's nuking Twitter these days. But yeah, definitely catch me on there, and we definitely hope we need to send some well wishes for Gail, because her Padres obviously got eliminated.
Yeah.
From the playoff, and somehow now the Dodgers are getting the Lomets treatment. So we'll leave it there.
For those who want to talk boxing, music, fitness, you know what it is with me on Twitter, Brother JR at Brother JR 76. Again, if you want to check out all info regarding Pound for Pound Box Report, please hit the site p4pboxingreport.com. On the next episode, we will have we will do a recap, excuse me, of um, excuse me, Murtazaliev and Tim Tszyu. Again, that fight is going to be for Murtazaliev's IBF belt at 154 pounds. We will also have a recap of Skull and Shushkin. That's going to be for the vacant IBF belt at 168 pounds. And we will do a preview of the 140-pound clash between Jack Catterall and Regis Progress. It's going to take place in Manchester, England, on the Zone. Again, I want to thank, make sure I get his name right, get Cosmic for his activity in the chat. Appreciate your comments. For Gail, who's unfortunately not here with us this evening, for Gail, for Daniel, I am your host, Michael. This has been episode 460 of the Pound for Pound Box Report. We'll see you guys next time. Everyone have a good evening. Good night.